All right. Hey, it's been a while since we've been on the show. Shane, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing today, Tim?
Pretty good. Excited to talk some basketball. We're about 15, 16 games into the season, and I don't think it's gone the way anyone would thought that it would go, especially in the Western Conference. Can't wait to talk about the West.
Yeah, the
So,
West
but
is
let's start
certainly
with
something, but we'll talk about it.
the team towards the bottom of the West, actually in 14th place in the Western Conference, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, what do you think on this one, Tim? I already know kind of my thoughts on what's wrong with this team, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Any specifics on this for him?
Everything is wrong with this team. I mean, by
Yeah,
every metric
fair
that
enough.
you can look at, they're a below average team. And then in other metrics like 3-point shooting, they're the worst. I mean, there was at one point this season, and I believe it's gone up, but I think it was the first 8 or 9 games, they were the worst 3-point shooting team in the league, and the gap between them and the second worst team was like a whole 4 or 5%. Like this team straight up cannot shoot the basketball. Last year they wanted to pin everything on Russell Westbrook. He was a bad fit, and he didn't play defense and he turned the ball over too much. All those things are true, but credit to Russell Westbrook, he's playing some really good basketball this year off the bench in a role that everyone thought he couldn't thrive in.
Yeah, I think for me, like you look at it, and obviously last year was a travesty of watching basketball, especially for a LeBron James led team. But obviously Russell got a lot of the flack, and deservedly so in a lot of cases. But this year, it just is very clear, like they didn't have shooting. They didn't expect to have shooting. They shouldn't have expected to have shooting, and they still don't. I think that just they're not going to be able to score the basketball efficiently, especially if LeBron is going to continue to have one of his worst years efficiency wise. He's still obviously good for across the league, but he's usually shooting a 50+% from two and close to 35% or better from three, and he's just not hitting shots like that this year. And we knew eventually he'd have to decline a little bit in efficiency just because he's getting older and it's not as easy to get easy buckets like he was always able to get. But he pretty much has to carry this team offensively every night for them to do well offensively, and it just isn't the same type of load that he can take anymore.
Which would definitely explain why he's missed, I believe, 3 or 4 games already this season,
At
which is
least three or four
insane
at this point.
considering who
Yeah,
he is. He's
for him.
out
Yeah,
tonight. He's listed as out for tonight against the Spurs, so that's going to be another game. But
yeah.
surprisingly, I believe they're like 3-1 in the games he doesn't play, or that's one of the more obscure
Yeah,
stats.
I mean, I haven't looked at who they played. I forget exactly, but like they have, I feel like maybe things just flow a little bit easier, and the guys get a chance to just kind of play and not think as much. Which obviously, I'm not saying that he's making the team worse, but it's making a different dynamic when LeBron's not out there. So
I'm here on the schedule looking for games that they've won. It's very hard to find on the fly.
yeah, I mean they're 4-10, so it's kind of they have won their last two games. I will say that. So
Yeah, they do have 2 straight wins against the Nets, who we're going to talk about very soon as well.
yes, yeah,
And the Pistons, they're the rest of November.
not
They've got the Spurs, the Suns, the Spurs. They actually have the Spurs like 3 times in the next 7 days. Then they get the
good
Pacers
draw.
and another team we're going to talk about later, the Portland Trail Blazers. But the Western Conference, we thought it might be a little bit down this year because I don't know about you, but I did see the Suns coming back to earth a little bit. And sure, they have. They're not going to win
Yeah,
65 games, but they're 1 game out of first place right now. And to the Lakers' credit, the West is still incredibly close. It's not very
yeah.
good after those first 4 teams. The bottom play-in team right now is another team that we thought was going to be a whole lot better. It's Minnesota Timberwolves sitting in 10th place. So, the Lakers, it's early. It's 14 games in. They're by no stretch out of it. But I don't think a team with this many older guys, and they did make an effort to get younger, but let's be real. Their 3 highest paid players are what LeBron James is about to turn 38 in next month. Russell
I
Westbrook
believe
is in his
so.
30s. And then, sure, Anthony Davis is 28, 29, but when has he ever been able to stay healthy? They need LeBron James and
Right,
Anthony
need
Davis
help
play
at this
bare
point,
minimum
that's correct.
65 games to make the playoffs. And as of right now, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. No, I think that's the problem is like you can look at the West right now and say, yeah, like everything's pretty close together. There's a couple teams that are showing out so far, but nothing too spectacular. They're not out of it just from a standings perspective, but where do they have to go, right? Like how much better can they get than they are? And it's really just comes down to all their stars have to play well and together. And even that might not really be enough because especially if some of these other teams that are right in the area of them also can kind of pick it up for the rest of the season. You might see, teams that are, that 40, 42 win range that don't even make the playoffs in the West because there's so many teams in that mid tier that kind of fill in the playoff spots and leave them kind of outside looking in.
And their shooters are not just going to magically get better throughout the season, right?
This is just a bad
These
shooting
are
team.
these are not good shooters in a slump. These are just guys who have
No.
their entire career been average to below average shooters. This is why I thought they should have, really tried to play ball with the Nets in a trade that would have brought, Kyrie Irving and Joe Harris when that was talked about. This trade with the Pacers that seemingly gets talked about every week that brings over Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield would easily be the best shooter on this roster. Miles Turner
by far
would potentially be the second or third best shooter on this roster. These dudes straight up can't shoot.
Yeah, it's just not good right now. And that move is probably their best chance if they can make that move happen in some way, however they need to do it. That's probably their only way to like league average-ish shooting as a team. But even that, I mean, they're 30th and they were distant 30th, like you said, not long ago. And I don't see them getting significantly better at that throughout the year, even if they add some people. They're still going to be in that middle to below average shooting team, and they don't have the rest of the offensive firepower or the defensive chops to win 45 plus games with that type of roster.
Every time they take the court, they are the worst shooting team. And then most of the time when they take the court, they are the worst defensive team. The only reason they're remotely in any of these games is because of the two guys we mentioned at the top.
Yeah, that's about it.
But we do have another team to talk about, another team that's constantly in the headlines. I want to say for the wrong reasons, but that's putting it lightly. The Brooklyn Nets are in the headlines every day for just different reasons, out of this world reasons. Kyrie Irving, obviously, everyone knows about what Kyrie's been up to. I do believe that he's anticipated to return at some point this week. I hear now there's a lawsuit coming from the Players Association stating that the reasons listed for Kyrie's suspension were against the newest collective bargaining agreement.
Sure. All right. You want to go down that tree, go for it. You want to go down that road, go for it.
But there's a new reason that the Nets are in the headlines, and it's a recent interview with Kevin Durant where he essentially listed off the Nets' current starting lineup and said without saying, how do you expect me to win with these guys? He decided to list all of their names and said, the only reason you expect us to win is because number 7 is out there. I would love your take on it, Shane, because I do have a take on it as well.
So I always struggle with stuff like this because on one hand, people who want to be in media like we want to be, or people who do shows like this, we love stuff like this because one, it gives us something to talk about, but also it's a player being obviously honest, because you wouldn't say this just because you're saying this because that's how you feel, right? Like Kevin's not saying this just to rile people up or do whatever else. He believes what he's saying. And I appreciate that to a certain degree. However, is it the best thing to do? Most likely, is it going to make his teammates all of a sudden think, oh man, I have to play better because Kevin called me a bum in an interview? Like, probably not. Some of those guys might respond that way. I really don't know, obviously, but it's very interesting your player talks so openly about his organization in a negative way, where it's very clear that's what it is, whether he says it exactly that way or not, and not be that surprised. And I think with Kevin, it's not that surprising.
I don't see the need to go after guys like
exactly.
Royce O'Neal and Edmund Sumner. Are they even good NBA players? Probably not. Royce O'Neal did have a triple-double the other night, by the way, and the game-winning.
I think he's a good NBA player.
The game-winning shot against Portland.
Right.
But, Kevin, why is Edmund Sumner starting? Why is Royce O'Neal starting? Well, it's because Kyrie Irving is not allowed to play, and because Ben Simmons can't start. I don't know if you saw that tweet a couple weeks ago, and it goes, that points under for Ben Simmons on Prize Picks every night is free money, which it was It was true. I think it hit like the first 6 games of the season because he would also foul out of every game, which again he did the last time they played against Portland. And who came to the rescue with the triple double and a game-winning tip-in? Royce O'Neal. Why are we crapping on the role players? Like, we understand that you're not expected to win games with Edmond Sumner and Royce O'Neal starting, but they're not starting because of injury.
No,
they're starting because the other 2 guys are probably the 2 most unreliable players in the NBA.
And I think it's just tough if you're Kevin because, like, obviously he has a standard that he's being held to partially because of the fact that he made his decision years ago with Golden State and that whole situation played out. And like, ever since then, he's been highly scrutinized for good and bad reasons, honestly. I think it just depends on who you're talking to and what that reason is. But obviously, like at this point, if you're someone who actually believes the Nets should be good given their circumstances, then you're just not very smart at understanding how basketball works because this roster outside of Kevin right now, it's not a playoff roster even. It could be. I mean, this is in the East. If the East rolls a certain way and they can get hot a little bit, you could maybe make a 7, 8, even 6 seed. But this is not a team that you're expecting to win 50 plus games and go deep in the playoffs. Like as it's currently structured, it just isn't. So if he's trying to say that, then yeah, everybody should already know that. You don't have to make excuses for why that's not the case. But he just needs to understand. That's always bothered me with Kevin is like it feels like he isn't able to tune anything out. And I understand it's not easy to do, and I'm not in his shoes. I'll never be in his shoes, but so much seems to bother him about the way people perceive him and his team when all he really can control and do is go out there and try to make the best of the situation. And I think for the most part on the court, he's done that. But off the court, this is probably not the way to motivate your guys to try to make them a little bit better than what you perceive them to be right now. And that's what I have a problem with ultimately.
And something else I come back to, it goes, you only expect us to win because number 7 is out there. Who the hell is expecting the Brooklyn Nets to win a game with Edmond Sumner and Royce O'Neal starting?
Right.
Nicholas Claxton starting. It's not me. I don't look at the Nets when they lose without Kyrie and with Ben Simmons fouling out and say, man, can't believe Kevin Durant lost that game. No one is saying these things. The Nets have zero expectations right now because Kyrie's not playing. Yeah. And Ben Simmons, for whatever the issues may be, just can't seem to get it figured out on offense.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever will at this point, but that's just for another day probably. But they're just not, like I said, they're not a basketball team right now, and with or without him, like they just aren't. If obviously, I think it's eating him a little bit, and this is not how he perceived or how he thought that this would go when him and Kyrie joined the Nets, but stuff happens, and he should know as well as anybody that decisions you make have either consequences or benefits. He benefited greatly from the first big decision he made in this one, not so much. It goes both ways, but I do think that probably the best thing for him and the Nets is what he originally wanted to, which was the trade request. I don't know if that will ever end up happening, at least not this year, but that's probably if he wants to get back to a point where he not only can win, but has actual expectations to win. That's probably what it's going to have to take at this point.
I don't think the role player is going to play any harder because you called him a bum in an interview. I'll tell you that much.
Exactly. Right. 100%. Yeah.
We do have another topic to talk about, and I know we're still, really, really early in the season. This team that I'm going to talk about has only played 15 games, but there have been some really interesting surprises at the start of the season. Like I said in the Western Conference, the top 2 seeds in the West, if you would have asked me before the season, what's got better odds? These 2 teams being 1 and 2 in the West, or these 2 teams being 14 and 15 in the West? I would have put the house on these 2 teams being 14 and 15. But here we sit with the team that I want to talk about, the number 1 seed Portland Trailblazers. And not number 1 seed because the West is bad, because they've got a team right behind them, and then you have the Suns, like I said, and I know the Warriors have gotten off to a slow start because they couldn't win a road game for like a month and a half. But the Blazers sit here at 10-5. They are coming off a loss, like we mentioned, to the Nets. But you look at their schedule, they got blown out once. Like the Suns took them to the woodshed in 1 game. Every other game is 2 possessions or less. They lost on a tip into the Nets, and they have 2 losses by 5 points. And, and they've beat some teams that, well, at least we think should be good. They have a win against the Miami Heat, but perhaps the Miami Heat aren't nearly as good as we thought they were going to be. They did, however, almost win a game with 7 players last night. I don't know if you saw that.
It did, yeah.
The Miami Heat went to Washington with 7 guys and took the Wizards to overtime.
I mean, it's the Wizards, but you'll take what you can get, right?
So I look at the upcoming stretch for the Blazers. We've got a monumental matchup of the top 2 seeds in the West with the Blazers playing the Jazz. And this is a really good, interesting stretch for the Blazers. A lot of really good tests. We can see, are they a legitimate playoff team or are they just an early team that fades? They've got the Jazz and then the Bucks, Cavs, Knicks, Nets, Clippers, and then, of course, to finish out November, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, the Blazers, like you said, I think it's really interesting. Not just the fact that they're the number 1 seed right now, but the fact that a lot of it is to do with defense and not offense. Defense rating 6 right now, offensive rating at 13. Offensive rating 13 is really respectable, especially some of the hot starts some offenses have had. But having defense rating 6 in the league at this point, even though it's still a small sample size, that I think bodes pretty well, because even if that comes down closer, just outside the top, the offense can get closer to 10. This at least is going to be, I think, a mid playoff team, which I think for the Blazers last year and the last 2 years, really, you'll take that 100%.
I mean, how about if you would have asked me before the season, how many guys on the Portland Trail Blazers are going to average more than 20 points? I would have told you 1. There's 3 of them right now. Anthony Simons. I mean, look, he's always an interesting young player. They gave him the contract this offseason. I really didn't know what they were doing because they decided to get rid of a 2 small guard lineup when they traded CJ McCollum to create another 2 small guard lineup with Anthony Simons. But Anthony Simons has answered the bell in his first, full season as Damian Lillard's quote-unquote co-star. Anthony Simons is at 22.5 points right now. Assist numbers are low because he is the off guard. But with the assist numbers being low, his turnover numbers are also low, which was a problem for him early in his career. Really didn't have a good handle on the ball, was very careless. But he's at only 2 turnovers a game right now. His PER is it could use some work, certainly, because I think he's 5th on the team or something. But Anthony Simons has played some really good ball these first 15 games. And if he can keep this up, I think the Blazers are going to be a playoff team, which, again, before the season, if you would have asked me the Portland Trailers a playoff team, I would have told you, hell no. And then their other player scoring 20 points, Jeremy Grant.
Yeah,
one of the sneaky moves this offseason that didn't get a lot of talk about because everyone was talking about the moves that may happen that never happened. But Jeremy Grant traded to the Blazers from the Pistons, and he's been an unbelievable addition for them.
I mean, you go back to Simons, like him as the secondary ball handler and the secondary scorer. That's definitely his best role if he's going to be in a prominent role, and he's shown that so far. The efficiency numbers, I'd like to see him shoot a little bit better from the field at 42%, but his 3-ball looks good, 38%. Grant's shooting the hell out of the ball, it's close to 47.5% right now for 3 for Grant. So obviously that'll come down a little bit. The shooting splits will come down, especially for Grant. I think that the overall efficiency will come down a little bit. But this is still a quality offensive team, and I think the defense can hold up well enough to keep them in, not the 1 spot, I doubt, obviously, but maybe top 4 seed at the very least at the end of the year, which is huge for them moving forward.
Chauncey Billups has to be an early candidate for Coach of the Year.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Getting even just this hot start, and especially the defensive changes and everything that's gone on with that. Like, Grant helps that a lot for sure. That's really what they kind of, I think, were looking for most of all with getting him. But if they could finish even inside the top 10, where they're at 6 right now, like I said, it's a huge season for them. But I think the team that's even more surprising, though, for being realistic, team right below them in the standings, the Utah Jazz. If you would have told me that the Utah Jazz would have had double-digit wins through 17 games, it just doesn't make sense. Like, teams aren't supposed to blow up the way they did and then just decide, oh, actually, we're going to be a top 3 seed for, like, the first quarter of the year. Like, it just doesn't happen. And a lot of it is players that I don't even know if they were counting on being truly great when they got the million in. Right now, he's playing like an all-star, like, legitimately. And getting that type of in a season where you didn't expect to do anything, it almost feels kind of counterintuitive in a way. Like, you weren't supposed to be good. The whole idea was you're supposed to kind of take each year, collect your picks, figure out what you want to do, maybe find the next true superstar of this team. And instead, you have all these guys playing out of their minds, and that's awesome, obviously. But I think if you're the front office, you're like, well, how do we handle this? Do we become buyers? Like, if you're in still the top 3 seed going into the trade deadline, do you buy a player even though you just collected all these picks? Like, I do think it's going to put them in a weird position when you get down to it, though.
Yeah, definitely. Someone I wanted to highlight for the Jazz, we talk a lot about what you lose with Rudy Gobert, and about the rim protection. Walker Kessler, rookie out of Auburn, almost at 2 blocks a game. Big, strong body, great rim protector, great rebounder. Now, they're a great rebounding team because Lauri Markkanen is at 8, and then Jared Vanderbilt, I believe, is also averaging a career high in rebounds. They've got Walker Kessler. Colin Sexton is not having the season we thought. Colin Sexton's going to be the main ball handler here in Utah, and he's going to put up a bunch of empty calorie stats on low efficiency, and maybe it'll help him with an all NBA third team if they magically win 35 games. Colin Sexton's been a non-factor, honestly. He comes off the bench. He's only started 1 game. He's only at 13 points. It's Lauri Markkanen and former 6th man of the year Jordan Clarkson that are really carrying the load right now.
Yeah, and I will say with Colin, he's doing his job well that they've asked him to do. He's been efficient. He's gotten his 13 points off the bench. He's having a quality season for a role player, but like you said, we didn't think that he was going to be relegated to that just because this is a rebuilding year. Give him the reins, let him kind of do whatever he wants to do and see what happens. But now that they're winning like this, that is his life. For it may not be best for him for he looks like for a new contract, but I think that this type of role on a winning team is kind of his best fit long term anyway. So maybe he's just finding that out early.
He's essentially become what Jordan Clarkson was for them when they had Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now the Clarkson stepped into that full-time role, and I really didn't expect him to play better in that role just because I didn't expect that to be the case for him, but he has so far. And if he keeps it up, like I said, this team could still, even with some regression, which obviously you expect somewhat, they're still probably a playoff team and a solidly playoff team, not even a play-in team by the end of the year, unless something drastic changes.
And of course, we mentioned him briefly, but Lauri Markkanen, I mean, he is maybe turning into what we thought he would be as a 7th overall pick. Probably not. It's probably, early season flashes, but he's been really, really good.
I mean, if he could just be a 28 guy and you get 35% plus shooting from 3, and he's an effective guy down low, that's all you need from him to be a legit piece of this rebuild moving forward. Because right now he's playing like an all-star, but he's probably not going to. Obviously, it's not going to be a long-term thing. I doubt it. You hope for that, and if that's the case, then you definitely, honestly, you might have ended up actually winning the trade with the Cavs, regardless of what happens at that point. Especially if you hit on the draft picks that you get, but. It's interesting to me because usually with basketball, especially opposed to other sports, when you try to tank, you tank. There isn't really this oh man, there's this huge surprise team that has nobody playing on it. And it's not that they have nobody, but they have a group of guys that everyone just assumed was going to be at least a bottom 5 seed in the West, maybe not the worst team, but a team that didn't seem like they wanted to win. And now they're just getting crazy performances from just about everybody. And we'll see if it keeps up. But again, they gave themselves a nice cushion, and I doubt they're a bottom 5 seed. Let me put it that way by the end of the year.
Which I think, of course, long term is going to work against them. But like we always say when it comes to situations like this, coaches and executives tank, but players don't tank. Players go out there and they play.
Yeah. And so far they're playing way above their heads, but good for them, honestly.
Yeah. Some great basketball talk, Shane, but now it's time for everyone's favorite sport at this time of year. It's time for some football.
What's up, boys? How we doing?
What's up, Matt?
Not much. Feels good to be back, that's for sure, after taking some time off. And like you were getting to, we got a lot of football to talk about. Obviously, right now is the crucial time for this sport. So let's start off with a little bit of looking at the NFL wild card right now. This is the picture as of today before tomorrow's games kick off. And I just wanted to go through these, look at them, and kind of get y'all's opinion. Out of these groups right here, which team is most likely not going to be there at the end of the year, and what team will replace its spot? So let's start off at the top here. Shane, what do you got for us?
So I look at that 7th spot in the AFC, right, with the Patriots. I just don't trust this team. And I understand it's Bill Belichick and the Patriots and all that stuff, but Mac Jones is just bad right now. And the quarterback play just hasn't been good in general. You saw a little bit of a spark with Bailey Zappi at one point, but whenever you're dealing with quarterback play this poor, I just don't see some of the teams below them. You look at the Bengals, especially. That's the team I think that will ultimately get at least the 7th seed, if not a higher seed. You know, I hate saying that as a Steelers fan, as you could tell from the stuff behind me, but they have Joe Burrow. They're going to get Jamar Chase back here in the next couple of weeks. Their defense is still playing very well. They have some injuries there, but I don't think it's going to be crippling. I just feel like they're going to win enough games to get back into the playoff hunt again, like they did last year, and probably not make the same run, obviously, the Super Bowl, but they're just a better football team, I think, right now than the Patriots.
Do you think they have any opportunity of winning their division, catching Baltimore?
I mean, unless an injury start piling up again for Baltimore, or like Lamar gets on not just like a slow streak of some kind, which I doubt at this point in the year. It's going to be hard for them to overcome them. They already have a head-to-head loss. If they can win their next game against them and tie up that series at least, then it gives them a shot at the end of the year. But I think the schedule favors Baltimore a little bit there too. So
I'd agree with that too. And I'll get into mine really quick, who I think is going to be out. And I'm going to go NFC. I'm looking at the 6th seed here. I actually think Cowboys are not going to make the playoffs here, boys. I'm looking at their schedule right now, and this team has just been so controversial when it comes down towards the end of the season for years. Obviously they're going to be playing the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota tomorrow at 4:25. So that's going to be a lot on their plate to handle with. And I think Minnesota will come away with a win there. So that's going to be the start of their, down toward the bottom trend here. I think they're going to lose a game to the Giants as well. They still have to play the Giants. They got a couple other easy games in there. And the Colts, Texans, and Jags, I expect them to drop one there as well. But the main reason why is the end of their season. They go and play the Eagles, guys. They play the Titans, who always seem to play relatively decent towards the end of the season, and especially at their home turf. And then also, I'm going to throw it in there now. They're going to lose to a team at the end of the year, and that's going to be the team I have replacing them. That's going to be the Washington Commanders, guys. I do believe in the Taylor Heineke train here. Listen, you guys might be giving me some stuff here, but I think their schedule is somewhat favorable. I mean, if you look at who they play still, they play the Texans, they play the Falcons, they play the Giants twice. They play the 49ers, which will be a tough game. But other than that, they've got the Browns and Cowboys. And if they can just rally enough and sneak a couple wins here and there, I think they'll be fine. And I think Taylor Heineke is that key, not in the sense that he's going to dominate games, but he's going to be able to beat teams that are good enough to be in the playoffs. So I'm going to have the Cowboys dropping out here, boys. I got the Commanders heading to the playoffs this year.
I like it. Bold take there with the Commanders, led by Captain Taylor Heineke.
Why not though? I mean, why not though?
I mean, they're rolling. They are very much.
If you're ever going to bet on that team, if you're ever going to bet on that team, it's right this moment. So I can't blame you.
I'll tell you, I just think with Heineke at the helm there, it causes them to not make as many mistakes. And I think that's key towards the end here, especially with their schedule coming up when they are able to win so many games here. I don't think it's too much to ask of them to go and beat a team like Indianapolis and Houston. As long as they play mistake-free football, which I think they're capable of, they're fine. And I do like their defense too. It's not terrible, but it's on the rise of becoming consistent. So at the end of the day, I'll take the Commanders. And for me, the Cowboys, they just got a good defense. Other than that, they're having too much issues at the offensive front, and it's so much uncertainty. I don't think they get it together.
I like it. In the AFC is really weird right now because I know we're looking at who's in right now, but let's be real. I think we all expect Buffalo to win the East and Miami to be the wild card team. And I think we all expect that there's going to be an AFC North team, either the Bengals or the Ravens, whichever one doesn't win the division, instead of every single team in the AFC East. I think the one to fall out is the Patriots. Haven't played that many division games yet, still have pretty much half their division schedule. They have the Jets again, which they already beat, which is really going to be good for them. But I really don't see them sweeping the Jets. I don't think this year's New England team can hang with Buffalo at all. And as was well documented by myself in week one, the Patriots just seem to have no answer for number one down there in Miami. So they might go 0-5 against him. Their schedule in general is tough because of the division they play in. I mean, I don't think the Jets are going to be this good, but the Jets, Defense is unbelievable. Run game is unbelievable. If they can get Zach Wilson to just not run around like a chicken with his head cut off, they can win a lot of football games. That takes a lot of work because he really does still think he's out there playing in the Mountain West. But when they've gotten him to really settle in and play in structure, that is a really, really crisp offense with some nice weapons and a nice offensive line. So when the Patriots fall out, and I think it's going to be the Chargers that get in as a wild card because I look at their schedule and every game remaining is very winnable. They have the Chiefs this week, obviously, which is tough. But, I mean, if you win that game, we're not even talking about wild card for the Chargers anymore. We're talking about how do the Chargers win the AFC West. But keeping it to the wild card, you got the Cardinals. I'm never going to pick the Cardinals to win a game. We talked about this in the offseason. No one thinks less of Cliff Kingsbury than myself. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure his players like playing for him. The man's not a
I don't know. Kyler might be.
Kyler might not. Then you have the Raiders. The Raiders are an unmitigated disaster of a football team right now, my friends. Okay. Then they have the Miami Dolphins. That's a tough game. Dolphins can score with anybody, but that Dolphins defense is not very good. So I think a healthy Chargers offense could really find a way to put a lot of points on that Dolphin defense. Then you have the Titans, which is not an easy game. But if you can find a way to score on the Titans and make them have to throw it consistently, it's not how they like to play. I mean, they talked about it the other night on that broadcast a million times. How few catches wide receivers have on this team. If you're going to make them push the ball down the field, it's probably not going to go too well for them. You're really going to take them out of their comfort zone. Then you have the Colts. There's a lot of things we can say about the Colts. Right now, they're 4-5-1. They are coming off a big win against the Raiders, though. I'll give them that. However big you want to call a win against the Raiders. The Rams can't block anybody. I'm sorry. That offensive line's a disaster. The offense just stinks, which I didn't think was going to happen at all. And then you finish with the Broncos, who, again, are another team in turmoil, pretty beat up. Russ is not playing like we thought he would. I think the Chargers are the easiest bet out of any of these teams currently sitting out to supplant the Patriots, who I do have dropping a couple division games along the way. On the other side, it's tough because I really don't think the NFC is going to change all that much. Maybe the seeding of these teams will. The team that I want to say has the best shot to make it from the outside is the Packers because they have Aaron Rodgers. I know they look terrible, but we've seen this movie over and over and over again. And now, granted, he doesn't look like himself. Like this is a shell of Aaron Rodgers.
I don't even think he could say the word relax this year. And
no one should be relaxed. Everyone should be very, very worried about the Packers. But man, if anyone could do it, and they're sitting at 4-7 right now. And if San Francisco were to magically drop this game to the Cardinals, that'd put them at 5-5. The Packers 4-7. I'm sorry, am I stupid?
Yeah, they're 4-7.
They're 4-7, right? Because they haven't had a bye either.
Yeah,
I think they have their bye coming up in like 2 weeks. That's why they've played so many games because they already played this week and they didn't have a bye. If anyone could do it, I think it's old number 12. And it's definitely not going to be easy because the Minnesota Vikings, we can keep making fun of them all we want with their fake. It's not a fake 8-1 record. 3-1 could be fake. 4-1 could be fake. When we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner in a couple days and the Minnesota Vikings still have one loss, you can't call them fake anymore. This is a really, really good football team.
Yeah, by the time dinner is over, they're going to be 9-1.
They playing the Vikings?
Most likely.
The Lions?
Minnesota plays who they play? The Patriots.
The Patriots? Oh, yeah, they might be.
They'll be 9-1.
They might be 9-1.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't call them fake anymore. This is a really, really good football team. I think the Packers' shot of winning the North died a long, long time ago. But I look at the rest of their schedule, and they have the Eagles this week, and that's a tough game. Don't get me wrong at all. But after that, you get the Bears, who present problems with the new way they're playing offense. But as someone who got to watch their defense closely a couple weeks ago, it's not very good. Then you get the Rams, like we talked about. Their defense is good, but they can't block anybody. Their offensive line can't stop the three of us on a 3-man rush. I will be in Matt Stafford's lap. I guarantee it. Then you've got, it always comes back to the Dolphins when I'm reading these schedules. Good offense. Defense is hit or miss. I think Aaron Rodgers could have his way with that defense too, especially with the way Christian Watson's emerging. And then you have to get the Vikings again, objectively, tough game. And then you finish with the Lions, who we know can score, but also can't stop anybody.
Except the Packers.
Well, Aaron Rodgers was the leading rusher in that football game. So
Yeah, that was a rough one. If I've ever seen a game that was like, I'm turning
as
this
long as
off.
Matt LaFleur doesn't dial up any more, goal line fades to his all-pro left tackle, I think they'll be fine.
We shall see what happens here. All right, boys, let's get into our next topic here, though. We're going away from the NFL for a little bit. Let's get into college football. The college football rankings have been going up and down, up and down. There was potential that it could have been completely wiped out today, but due to some last-second victories, some teams in the top 4 were able to hang on. But looking at the board right now, we've got number 1, Georgia, number 2, Ohio State, 3, Michigan, who held on today, 4, TCU, who escaped with a win today, and then Tennessee 5 and LSU at 6. Quick question: after so many games have already happened today, where do you see the standings right now, even before we get into the later games going on tonight?
I can start. I think in terms of what the rankings
I feel
are going
like
to be on Tuesday.
Oh, go ahead, Tim. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think there's a little bit of a delay.
No, go ahead, Tim.
I don't think the standings are going to change too much, barring something crazy. Now, in terms of what it, may actually be in 3-4 weeks, TCU can't keep doing this, right? They just can't pull it out of their ass every single week. Don't get me wrong. I like Sonny Dykes. He's a good coach. I think TCU's got a pretty good team. I think they're going to be good for a long time. I think a year like this helps you out in recruiting and in the portal and getting better players. But they're not that good. They just keep finding ways to win. And they're not beating, nobody like, FCS, G5 schools. The Big 12's got some pretty good teams this year. Teams that can really score. Outside of Baylor, a lot of those teams can really put points on the board. And TCU can put points on the board too. I think it'll be a fun game if they get, an Ohio State who also likes to throw, or if they get a Tennessee who can score a lot of points. But if they've got to deal with, the trenches of Georgia, the trenches of Michigan, even the trenches of LSU, which I know a 2-loss team has never made it. It kind of feels like there's precedent for a 2-loss team being out, but they're stacking some unbelievable wins. The team I'm most intrigued by, it's not on this list, it's USC. Now, unless I've forgotten something, USC still has 1 loss.
Correct.
I think if USC runs the table, it's going to be really hard to keep them out. Their 1 loss would be on the road in Utah on a 2-point conversion. And they get to avenge that loss in a potential conference championship game. USC's defense is bad. Like, they've got some turnover luck early in the season. That's come back to earth. They seem to, again, like TCU, have to play a close game every week when it's just a seemingly better than average team. But I think USC's resume is going to look really good at the end of the year if they can avenge that Utah loss. Now, in terms of who I think is going to win it all, I think it's those 2 teams at the top. I think we're, on a collision course for that championship game. I think it's going to be an awesome championship game. I can't wait for it. I got a little bit more confidence in Ohio State, I do have to say.
I'll pick it off from there. I'm going to go and look at, the top 2 right now. Like you said, they're going to stay put unless something magical happens. But for me, I'm looking at Michigan at number 3 here. They obviously go to Ohio State next week. And after just watching them like literally an hour ago, they did not look good, guys, at their home field whatsoever. I know the weather conditions were up a little bit, lots of wind down there, but they just did not look in sync into a team in Illinois that isn't ranked right now at the time being. It looked like they were struggling. So I'm expecting Ohio State to absolutely unload on Michigan next week. And that being said, I think if Tennessee was to bumped when they were number 1 to Georgia and they bumped all the way to the outside, I think Michigan might bump to 5 with that loss. I think for them to get in, they have to win out and beat Ohio State. As for TCU, I think they're going to end up getting into the college football playoff just based on schedule. Yeah, they do play Illinois up next, and obviously they kept it close with Michigan. I don't think they'll be able to do that for 2 weeks in a row unless they have some solid game planning ahead of them. So I'm expecting TCU to make it. Really, it's going to come down to 3 teams. It's going to come down to Tennessee. It's going to come down to can LSU beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, and then USC. I mean, at the end of the day, their schedule favors them the most if they win out because they're 2 ranked opponents right now. So they're going to they would add that to their resume along with going to a championship game and potentially winning that. I think USC would then bump in. For Tennessee, I think to make it, they obviously have to win out. And then I think at the end of the day, you got to have USC lose one. LSU needs to lose the SEC championship game. But as of right now, I think it's those 3. Other than that, TCU, Ohio State, Georgia, it's a lock for them right now, guys.
Yeah, I can see this playing out a couple different ways. Obviously, I think Georgia. I do think they're ultimately going to win out the rest of the year. Personally, I just don't think they're going to lose the rest of the way. Ohio State, they've looked shaky a couple times this year. Right now, they only got a 4-point lead over Maryland. Right now in the third quarter. So, and to his brothers lighting them up as far as yardage at least goes. So that's something to monitor, see how they kind of end the year. Assuming Ohio State does finish undefeated and beats Michigan and then also beats them again, then you assume that at that point you're going to be in a position to have them at least number 2. Obviously, if Georgia finishes out, they're going to stay at number 1. I think the question comes, how far does Michigan fall when they do likely lose, right? Because if they fall completely out of it, which I think they would at this point, Tennessee moves up most likely if they keep going. LSU comes down to Georgia later on. Obviously, we kind of know that's pretty much their ticket in if they're going to get in, is they have to beat Georgia in the title game. And even that, depending on the way rest of things fall, they might not still get in at that point. I think TCU, I have a hard time thinking if everyone else wins around them, right? If all the other major wins happen around them, they might be just outside of consideration for a lot of the reasons you guys said. They aren't that good of a team, honestly. It's hard to say that about a team that's now 11-0, but I think Tennessee's definitely better than them. I think LSU is definitely better than them. I think USC probably is better than them. So as long as their resumes are similar, even if TCU goes undefeated, I could see the committee saying, you know what, I understand they're undefeated, but we know that one of these teams is better, so they're going to go in. And I know people will be upset about that. In a couple years here, we won't have to worry about that type of stuff, which is nice. But for the time being, I think at least 2 of these teams are not going to be in there by the end of the year.
So real quick, I want to get y'all's opinion on if we had 1-loss teams in Tennessee, Michigan, and USC. There's only 1 spot left. Say TCU goes undefeated. Who will be selected going in as the 4th spot to most likely play Georgia in the first round of the college football playoff?
I'll let you go first, Tim.
I think if it was up to the committee, it would be Tennessee. I think Tennessee, even though they didn't look great against Georgia, I still think this is the best offense in the country by a mile. I still think Hendon Hooker should be at least maybe one of the 4 guys going to New York for the Heisman ceremony. I think that game against Georgia probably turned off a lot of people from giving him a first place vote, but he's playing great ball. The whole Tennessee offense is impossible to stop. But who I would put in is USC. I think conference championships still matter as bad as the Pac-12 is. The Pac-12's got a couple good teams at the top, and the rest of the conference, Arizona State, Colorado, they're dumpster fires right now. And those teams at the top, sure, they're feasting on those teams, but USC, who do they get tonight? Do they get Oregon?
UCLA.
And then next week's Oregon, or is the title game?
Notre Dame, I believe.
Notre Dame.
Oregon would be the title game.
Oregon would be the title game. Those are some resume-building wins right there. UCLA is still ranked.
Even if they get to the championship game, I think their conference championship game and are undefeated and then proceed to lose, I think personally they would be the favorite to make the 4th spot.
That loss to Utah really hurts if they don't get to avenge it in a potential title game.
Yeah, I agree. And just looking at the scenarios, I think with all these 1-loss teams, if it comes to that scenario, I think Michigan's out of it. Just because if I do see them losing, I don't see them losing by 3 points or 7 points here, guys. I think Ohio State would do their business. Tennessee, the reason why, if I was to put them in there, and I would love them to be in there, obviously, it's because they lost to the number 1 team in the nation, and that's their only loss of the year. Just unfortunate they're on the same division of their conference, the SEC. But when it comes to USC, like I said, if they're undefeated going into the conference game, then lose the conference championship, I think they would make it ahead because they had to play the extra game.
That's what I think it comes down to is if USC is the conference champion and doesn't lose the rest of the way with just the one loss, you're looking at 3 one-loss teams. Only one of them is a conference champion, right? And obviously that isn't what should ultimately matter that much, but you're looking at it, it's hard not to give it to the team that won their conference when all of them have one loss, right? Obviously, Tennessee is going to have the best loss of it, and Michigan would be a close second at that point. But with USC, you do get that extra game, like you said, and you're a conference winner. I have a hard time thinking they'll leave them out unless someone is glaringly, better choice at that point.
I got a question for you guys about LSU.
Go for it.
Like they've got 2 losses, and I know a 2-loss team's never gotten in.
They beat Georgia, they're in.
I'm very big on like if the precedent is set, you can't just break it because you want to. But if they go to the title game and they beat Georgia, let's examine those 2 losses. One is to Tennessee, right? And look, they were at home and they got thrashed. Like I understand that. Like they got embarrassed. Their other one, and by the way, Tennessee's a top 5 team in the country. Their other one was on a neutral field, and I get that. Sure, it was New Orleans. We can call it a neutral field, but it's 73 miles from Baton Rouge. They lost on a blocked extra point to the team that currently sits at 19, Florida State Seminoles. Go Noles. And they might even rise because they thrashed Louisiana today and gave up a touchdown today for the first time since like October, whatever. Those were really 2 really, really good losses. Those are probably going to be 2 top 18 teams, one of them being the 5th overall team in the country. Like it's hard for me to get past getting blown out by Tennessee being your second loss.
Yeah.
But a win against Georgia.
The thing is, if they win out and obviously are the ones to go to the championship game and end up beating Georgia, I think what it comes down to is how much they win by. I think if it's outright, if it's by 10 points or more, then they will be gifted into it. If it's a last-second score by a team, they get lucky with it. I don't think they're going to give them that go-ahead. I think they will take a look at how the game is played out. But any team to beat the number 1 team in the nation is going to get rewarded, but it's kind of tough when you already lose to 2 other teams prior in the regular season.
And I think they've got everything on the resume you need to make the playoff.
Except the
2 losses, right?
And I'll tell you, LSU was very unfortunate to get Tennessee during midday. If they had Tennessee in later at night when it's the real Death Valley, and that crowd is awakened, it's a different atmosphere. So they got lucky there, or Tennessee got lucky there. Unfortunate for LSU. And then their other loss, like you said, it's the first game of the year, guys. I mean, come on now. Everybody's getting point. A blocked extra point too. It's a neutral site game. I understand that. I don't think that factors in as much. I kind of used the same argument with Georgia and Oregon when they played each other the first game of the year. And Georgia just absolutely, pissed all over them. And everybody was into consideration that, hey, Oregon should be there if they didn't lose, I think, last week or it was the week.
Washington, yeah.
Yeah, Washington. So, obviously if they still had 1 loss, they were probably in contention. They probably would have been at 6 right now behind Tennessee. But, I look at it and I say you lost fair and square to the team. That's what I look at personally. I think going forward, though, if LSU does beat Georgia in the championship game, I don't see how the committee doesn't want to put a big, school like LSU into the championship or into the playoff.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem is like realistically, should they get in? Probably not based on what I expect to happen around them. But if you don't put the SEC champion in there, it just doesn't happen, right? And obviously most SEC champions don't have 2 losses, so they never really have to worry about this.
Yeah.
But if you knock off the number 1 team, Georgia's not going out of the playoff for that. They're not. I know they're not going to.
Georgia's in, right? Because I think
their
rivalry game next week is Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Oh. 100%.
So, but
I think regardless of what happens in the title,
regardless what happens, they're going to even if they were to lose out for some reason. Yeah, Tennessee would be the next team. If they were the win out, they'd be tied. So they would still go to the championship game.
So Georgia's in. So it comes down to what happens with Michigan, what happens with TCU, right? If both of those teams lose, guess what? LSU's probably in the college football playoff. If only one of them ends up losing a game, I think that whoever loses game will be out, and whoever doesn't will stay in, and someone else will come up to replace them, and Georgia will fall in that case to probably to 4, I would guess, maybe 3. But it's going to be tough for them to get in even if they win. But if the right things happen, the committee will be able to find a way to rationalize it, because they'll look at that big shiny SEC championship trophy and go, well, hey,
It just means more.
yeah, right. I guess it just means more, right? Like, exactly. So, but I obviously hope that doesn't happen, because I struggle with it, because Twitter, meanwhile, which is already a dumpster fire, will become an even bigger dumpster fire
If
that
the
happens.
first 2-loss team to ever make
It'll be great.
is an SEC team,
because of course it would be, yeah. Like,
which it makes sense, right? Like, especially
I
this
can
year.
rationalize it, I can, but it's still like, I really hope it doesn't happen, because I want to see someone else make it from those teams. But
It'd be nice to change it up a little bit, you know?
yeah. So, but
Hey, dude, at the end of the day, I hope TCU makes it.
I mean, yeah, I'd love to see it, just because it'll probably be like Cincinnati last year. But still,
That's what I think.
But
Everybody.
I'm for it though.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, let's get into the last topic, real quick topic here, guys. We got a couple games after tomorrow and Monday going on, and that's the Thanksgiving games. Thought we would get into it because I don't think we'll have a show prior to it. I just want to go through each game real quick with you guys. You guys give me at least a 20-second spiel of what you think is going to happen in the game. We'll go from there. We'll go from top to bottom here on our screen, starting with Shane. We got Bills at Lions. Go.
Bills win probably by 10 plus. Hopefully Josh Allen is able to get back into a rhythm. Not sure what his deal is right now, but love to see him play good. Sorry, Lions. I don't think it's going to be your Turkey Day victory this time.
Yep, I'm going to continue with it real quick. I think Bills win outright here. They brought their sleeping bags because they're playing in Detroit, obviously tomorrow against the Browns. So they're just going to sleep on the field, get that nice holiday groove in, probably have a meal before they go out and play, and they'll probably dominate there. I got a big bounce back week for the Bills coming up here.
I got the Bills too. I think it'll be comfortable, but before the season, we went through the Lions schedule, and I said, man, the Lions are going to keep every game close. I do think the Lions keep this one close, especially because the Bills are going through a lot mentally with, how difficult it has been to schedule this game against the Browns. And then you have to play against the Browns, who are incredibly physical and a team that really wears you down. Like, you have to deal with Myles Garrett for 60 minutes. You got to deal with Nick Chubb for 60 minutes. And then the Lions are very similar with that offensive line. Like, you got to deal with them for 60 minutes. I could see maybe the Lions even building like a first half lead, and then the Bills, wake up. They're probably going to sleepwalk through the first half of this game. Let's be honest. And then I think Josh Allen and all them will turn it on, probably score 21 points in the third quarter. But I think for the first time in a while, the Lions are going to give us a little bit of excitement on Thanksgiving morning.
Okay, with that being said, we're going to go into the next game, which is Giants at Cowboys. Shane, go for it.
I got Giants winning on a last-second field goal, 20-23 specifically. That's a spoiler for the Sunday NFL live show tomorrow. You guys will hear more about that on that one.
Yeah, I've got Saquon Barkley and the Giants going for about 200-something rushing yards, and who knows, maybe a passing touchdown for old Saquon on Thanksgiving Thursday. But yeah, I think the Giants are going to win outright here. I think it's actually going to be somewhat of a closer game when it comes to the actual score. I think there'll be a lot of turnovers in the game going on here, just with that good Cowboys defense and sometimes the uncertainty of Daniel Jones. But I do have the Giants pulling one out at the end of the game here. And I think they'll be eating turkey legs after it.
I've got the Cowboys here. I saw some stat. Daniel Jones hasn't thrown an interception in like 3-4 weeks, something crazy like that, considering what Daniel Jones normally is. Am I wrong about that?
I wouldn't be surprised he doesn't throw the ball a whole lot.
I think they just had a bye week, if that's what's considered.
Okay. I think he's gone like 2 or 3 games without throwing one. I think he definitely throws one here. I think Parsons and Lawrence and that defensive line are really going to frustrate this Giants team. I liked Evan Neal a lot as a prospect, but offensive tackle is very hard to play early on in your career, especially flipping sides from what you played your last year in college. So I could see Parsons and Lawrence, kind of feasting on Daniel Jones in that backfield and pulling out a win for the Cowboys.
Alrighty, and let's get into the last game here. We got Patriots going to the Vikings for the primetime matchup on Thanksgiving. Shane, go ahead.
Vikings roll probably by about, I'd say, at least a touchdown. Like I said, I don't like this Patriots team that much. I don't think Mac Jones can stand up to even his actual basically what he would hope to be someday, Kirk Cousins. Don't think that's going to happen in this game. I think the Vikings are a legitly good regular season team. I still question their ability to win a playoff game, at least more than one, but we'll get to that later on in the season most likely. But I do have Vikings winning pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it looks like the Vikings are definitely the front runner here. Obviously, starting off 8-1 to the season, just unstoppable. But we have Kirk Cousins on prime time, so I'm not going to
the
go
one
with them,
hiccup.
guys. I'm going to take the Patriots. I
But
like
the
their
chain
defense.
Kirk Cousins, this is a different
like,
guy.
I like the defense of the Patriots against prime time Kirk Cousins.
Fair enough.
I know it's not the best one, but I do like Belichick and his defense just in this matchup. I think if there is one quarterback for him to dominate on a good team right now, it would be Kirk Cousins. So I'm going to take the Patriots.
I think it's going to be a really close game, kind of an exciting game, but I just have really, really little faith in Mac Jones right now.
As do I.
I don't think he was that good as a rookie. I think we kind of gassed him up because we wanted to. He's been even worse this year. I think a lot of that could be some confidence issues. The offensive line is worse. The weapons are exactly the same, which was not good. And then because he gets injured, he has Bailey Zappi breathing down his neck when he shouldn't be. Because Bailey Zappi wasn't any damn good when he played. They just won a couple games. And then he got pulled on prime time. So I think Mac Jones his confidence is taking a little bit of a hit. I think the Vikings, that pass rush with Hunter and Smith and all those guys can really frustrate him. Harrison Smith on the back end, and then Patrick Peterson's found the fountain of youth a little bit. So
when they throw the ball,
yeah, I think the Vikings are gonna pull this one out. Probably a low scoring game, and it might take a fourth quarter touchdown drive from Kirk Cousins. And how electric would that be if Kirk has a game-winning touchdown drive against Belichick on prime time?
We'll never hear the end of it
because I don't think he'll be wearing any clothes if he does. So
so we'll never hear the end of that if that happens. But
either way, boys, thank you for joining me for football here. Have a good Thanksgiving, all that stuff. But we'll see you guys next week.
See you.
Alrighty, everybody. That was our football talk there, but we're not done yet. Obviously, the show's a little different today. We're going to bring Sam in here, and we're going to talk hockey to end the show today. Sam, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Matt. I'm very happy that hockey's back. We're now in the swing of things. We got some storylines we can talk about, so I'm just excited to get into it.
Yeah, it's really interesting right now because it's still somewhat early in the season, but we definitely can understand where teams are right now. And we can start to put predictions on what they're going to do for the rest of the season. So you came up with a little segment today, and I'll let you introduce it, buddy.
Yeah, so obviously we have a few surprises early on. We're just going to go through some of the big ones and say whether or not we believe in them and whether or not we think that they're sustainable throughout the year. So our first one going up is the Boston Bruins. Obviously, they're starting off this year for first in the Atlantic. They've only lost 2 games so far. Crazy numbers. So, Matt, do you believe that the Boston Bruins are the best team in the Atlantic?
I do right now. And the reason why is strictly based off of, their all-around presence and physicality in this team. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to look at their leading scorer right now in points. That's David Pastrnak. We expected that. But outside of it, I mean, you really start to look at their lineup, and you got 18 points from Lindholm. You got 15 from Bergeron, 12 from DeBrusk, 11 tied with a bunch of players, whether it's Hall, Marchand, David Krejci. It just goes through the lineup. And the one thing that's so key in good teams is getting production each and every game from all 4 of your lines. And they typically do that on a weekly basis here. And for me, I don't see that stopping if it's already started now, where they're getting production from their lower lines. And then on top of that is their goaltending right now. I think it's been phenomenal, and they're really having a great start with Linus Ullmark down there. I think he's been great. Their defense doesn't really put them in bad situations. So I'm a believer right now in the Boston Bruins, and I think they're the favorite right now to finish first in their division.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Going into this year, I was down on Boston. I thought that, with not David Pastrnak, with Patrice Bergeron being a year older, with David Krejci being a year older, with Brad Marchand and Charlie McAvoy starting the year on IR with injuries, I thought they were going to take a step back, especially now losing the coach, Bruce Cassidy. Jim Montgomery brought in. I know he's a good coach, and I thought that was a good hire, but I thought they were going to miss him a lot. And I just thought they didn't have the depth scoring to make up for those injuries early on in the year. So I thought it would be kind of a down year for them. I was very wrong. Guys like Jake DeBrusk has stepped up huge. I thought they would rely too much on guys like David Pasternak and Taylor Hall to carry the offense. They're first in the league in goals per game. They're averaging 4 goals a game. Their offense has been humming, and the defense has been also, as expected, very, very stout. I think they're also first in goals given up per game at 2.1. Crazy numbers for them. Bergeron, I think in particular, does not look like he's aged as much as I thought he would. So for me, I think Boston is the team to beat so far. And with teams like Florida, Tampa, and Toronto not looking as strong as maybe we thought early in the year, they're definitely the team to beat in the Atlantic.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I believe I myself agreed too that I didn't think Boston was going to be good. I think they were going to be one of the teams to fall off, but it just shows you at the end of the day they got too much veteran presence on there that still have that hustle in them. And it's not even on the first 2 lines; it's on the second 2 lines as well. A guy like Nick Foligno, who's been around the league for a while, just doing his part. That's what you need. You need some physicality in this team too, and they bring that every year. I feel like that's always been their identity, at least when it comes to wearing the big B on the chest. So I don't see them dropping at any time soon. But I believe the next team I do see dropping coming up here. So,
Yeah, we'll get to them in a bit. One
yeah.
last thing. Charlie Coyle, another great addition, and David Pasternak, I mean, we knew he was good. He's
Yeah.
MVP caliber good.
Yep.
Wow,
And
what a
a
player.
lot of people put into consideration is it just because of that lineup? Is that the only reason that he's productive? Nope.
Mhm,
It's clear that
mhm.
it's not. He's just an all-star right now.
He's absolutely sensational. All right, so our next team. Do you believe in the New Jersey Devils? The Devils are currently first in the Central. Big surprise to us, only losing 3 games so far. They've won 12 in a row after their win today. Do you believe in New Jersey being the best team in the Central?
I don't. I
Wow.
don't believe in them. Obviously they got a really good start right now, and basically right now, what should we be doing? We should be, just relating them to the Boston Bruins because essentially they have the same record, same start to the
Mhm.
season. And I'm looking at their points per game, and really what their top players at. Jasper Bratt's leading this team in points right now at 22 points, followed by Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, both at 19, which is solid for only, I believe, 18 games played. But other than that, I'm looking throughout their lineup, and it seems to me that, yes, they do play with a lot of skill. This team is basically all skill design. But I feel like once they come against teams like the Boston Bruins or these big physical teams like Seattle, I don't think they'll be able to withhold their own, even though they have more skill, I think, than those teams. Maybe not Boston, but they're more skillful than a team like Seattle. I don't think they would have the physical presence to keep up with that type of team. So I think they're on a hot run right now. I think once injuries start to come, I don't think they have the depth to keep them going. That's just me right now. But other than that, they've had a phenomenal start. I do expect them to dip down a little bit though, and I don't think they're the favorites to win the division.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This has all the markings of just a young team that's a little bit ahead of what we thought they would be. Obviously, they have the talent with Hughes and Hischier. Someone like Andre Palat they signed. I know he's injured now, but I think he's probably provided some veteran leadership to help guide them. Andrew Burnett now on the coaching staff, former Florida coach, that probably was a good hire. But yeah, they're probably just a hot team. I mean, 12 in a row is something that you need a lot of puck luck for regardless. So I think this is definitely a case of things going well for them and good for them. They're ahead of schedule by far. They're second or they're third in the league in goals scored per game, second in goals given up. I think specifically on the goals given up front, that's going to come down to earth. They didn't change much personnel in the offseason. I don't think they have the tools, I think, especially in net too, with who Vitek Vanacek is now in goal for them. They don't have the pieces to sustain such a good defense. And I think that's going to come down to earth. And that's where I see the biggest drop off. Offensively, they're great. Their power play isn't even clicking. I think they're 20th in the league on the power play. But they have the guys to sustain a strong offense. Dougie Hamilton on defense is great at getting up in the play. I just think their defense comes back down to earth, and I think they'll slip a little bit in the standings.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Dougie Hamilton, he's a solid player. Obviously, he's been in the league a while. He's got
I love
14
Dougie
points,
Hamilton.
14 points in 18 games. But you really, when you look at Dougie Hamilton, you look more at what he brings to physicality and defensively. And I think he's just an outstanding defenseman. But when it comes to the other guys out there on the ice, I just don't think they'll be able to sustain it for the entire season. Not saying that they're not going to make the playoffs, that they don't have a chance whatsoever. I just don't see them being the front runners to go ahead and win their division.
Absolutely. And good for them. They're ahead of schedule. They'll probably be a wild card team, and Jack Hughes will get some much needed playoff experience. They're in a
Yes.
great spot for their future. Absolutely great. And so good for them for being where they are, but first place in that division, not likely to sustain going forward.
Absolutely. All right, so we got the next team coming up here, and this one's a little bit more interesting because we got to think about this one a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's been a team that's been around for years and years and years. Have always been, favorites to win Stanley Cups, at least to win their division, whatever it may be. And so we'll get to it right now. It's the Pittsburgh Penguins. They have a start of 7-7-3 for 17 total points right now. I believe there are only 2 spots outside of the wild card right now. So this one's kind of interesting to look at because it's more of older players on this team. So I kind of want to get your opinion first. What do you think?
I don't believe this is for real. I think they're just off to a slow start. I mean, look at the talent. We know the talent with Malkin and Crosby and Gensel and all these guys. I think Jeff Petrie was a great addition in the offseason. I predicted them to finish second. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but I still think they're a playoff team. I don't see them slipping out this early in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you there too, because I think right now the NHL just loves their 3 main guys there, or 4 main guys, in my opinion, which is Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, and then Letang. I think they're just such a dynamic group, and I think once they get probably another 2 weeks in, they'll really start to identify where they're at in the season, what they have to do to go forward to gain their playoff spot. I don't see a season though this year without the Pittsburgh Penguins. Especially Sidney Crosby, as he's getting a little bit older. I think he's will be able to turn around. He's a really good locker room presence guy. We've known that for years and years and years. So I think the older guys, it comes down to the other older guys here, though. Malkin, Russ, Letang, they need to step up and they need to start identifying where they're at right now in their season. But I think they're true professionals at the end of the year because they realize it's not time to panic right now. It's the start. It's early. Let's just work our way up through it. So I'm not going to count them out yet.
Yeah, the thing is, they're still 4th in the league in goals for per game. They're 7th in goals given up per game. So they give up the 7th most goals per game. So it's very clear where their problems lie. They lie defensively. And I think they have the infrastructure to just combat that, right? Jeff Petrie in the offseason, I know he's a little older, but I still think he's solid. Obviously, Chris Letang, been reliable for years as their best defenseman. I don't think that's gone. So the goal scoring is there. I just think they need a little bit more consistent goaltending, right? I mean, I think they've had some injury problems. So I just think those are the things that sort themselves out throughout the season. We know teams like the Pittsburgh, they play for the playoffs. They play for obviously going deep into the playoffs too. They don't really care about a first or second round appearance. So they're not giving it their best shot. And that manifests itself obviously very clearly on defense. So for me, this is nothing for Pittsburgh to be worried about just yet. Obviously, they're not the juggernaut they once were, but with all the guys still around, they'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think if it were to go the opposite direction and stay like this, I think it just comes down to goaltending at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
solid defense in front of them. I would say it's by far the best, or towards the top 10% of the league in combinations. I just think they need a little bit more from their goaltending and defense in general, and I think they'd be a lot better of a team outside of the scoring problem that they have. But that can easily be fixed. All it takes is a couple penalties and Crosby to be on the power play, along with his studs in Gensel or Malkin, whoever it may be. Once that happens, they can start producing high. Other than that, though, just wait for a couple of rivalry games to come up, and I'm pretty sure they'll start to get a little bit more intense.
Yeah, and Tristan Jarry this year, who's been a solid goaltender throughout his tenure, .895 save percentage. I think that's what tells you the whole thing. That's just not good enough for that guy. And
exactly. If we can get that up to the low 90s, it's going to look a lot better.
Once he gets up to 910, 915, what we think he is, smooth itself out.
Exactly. So I'm right now. I'm not putting the panic button on the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I think that's pretty safe to say.
Yep. So the next topic we have is more player centric, and that's about the best player in the league, Connor McDavid. So Connor McDavid, obviously we know he's just this incredible talent, but to me, I think he's taking another leap forward this year.
This is probably the craziest start I've seen him do in a long time, and just the sense of how he's operating the games. And, because there are certain players out there that'll focus just on themselves. But he, I think, is now in the middle where he understands that it is more about the team. It's not about the points. It's not about bringing the attention just through himself. It's about bringing the attention to his team through the entire media or through the entire, success of the team. But this guy is still just putting on a show. I mean, my goodness, 17 games already, 15 goals, 17 assists for 32 points.
2 points
Are
a
you
game.
kidding me?
2 points a game.
Are you kidding? Absolutely nuts to me. And the thing is, the only way that he will slow down is if he goes out due to injury.
Yeah.
Once he gets back, if he gets hurt, once he gets back, he'll be the exact same player.
These are Gretzky numbers.
Honestly, it's like better. It's like better than Gretzky. Like,
in an era where with much better.
I don't want to be that guy, that's like saying it, but like at least in our like day and age of watching hockey, I mean, this guy it's not even close. Yeah. I don't even like who is the second best player in the league, you think? McKinnon's not
scoring goals like this.
McKinnon's not even close to McDavid.
No, he's not scoring goals like this. I mean, it's crazy.
To me, it's more impressive I know they have Draisaitl there, who's amazing. Don't get me wrong. He's amazing. But I even do think if he was to leave and it was just McDavid there, just the amount of points per game that he would personally account for on his team is insane to me. So
it's insane.
I don't see him stopping anytime soon. And I hope he doesn't, because I hope he, breaks some stupid record this year. I don't know if it's possible, but I mean, this guy is just so much fun to watch. I can understand if you hate the guy because of how good he is.
Yeah.
Trust me, we've all seen that before. But to me, there is no stop in his game. And
when's the last time we had a 150-point season? He's on pace for that, and not even close. Like, he's going to get 150 points if he stays healthy.
I know, which is nuts. I think obviously he's bound to miss a couple games this year. That just happens in general with this new day and age of hockey. They take precautions, even if it's like a little ding to the head. They'll be like, "Hey, no, let's just keep him out." I still think this guy will. I mean, he's going to win pretty much every single trophy there is at the NHL awards when it comes to that time of the year. I don't know if he'll be lifting the cup though, or the Conn Smythe, but I mean, my goodness, this guy is phenomenal, and no way in hell that he goes down or anybody beats him this season.
We're entering an age that with Crosby leaving, this might be just pure statistical dominance in a player that we haven't seen since Gretzky, since Jordan and the NBA in the late 90s. I mean, it's that level of just pure level above everyone else, the playing field. It's crazy. And one thing I think that it gets underlooked is the defense is strong.
Yes.
The defense is good from Connor McDavid. I mean, I didn't think in hockey it was possible for a player to lift their entire team by himself like it is in, say, basketball or a quarterback in football. We're watching it right now. We're watching him by himself take Edmonton into the playoffs. It's unbelievable. I'm just happy to be watching it, honestly.
Yeah, and it's more, you kind of backtrack to last year and just the series. What was it against Dallas that they won? They beat Dallas, or was it LA?
Beat the LA,
right? I mean, that series was phenomenal by him. And then who they play in the second round again? Calgary. Was it Calgary?
Yeah, I mean, Calgary.
Yeah. Still played very well, very well. To me, I don't think there will be a player there. There is no prospect right now that is even close to what he was when he was a 16, 15-year-old kid.
We thought it might be Connor Bedard a few years ago. It's not.
And no, it's not. And the thing is, as soon as he sets foot on the ice, everybody knows where he is, and they are thinking, okay, how do we stop him? But you can't at the end of
They
the day.
can't.
The only thing that can stop McDavid is himself, and that is him having an off night and missing shots. That is the only thing that can personally stop him. The team is different because there's 3 other lines that got to get out there and play a shift. So
Yep. You got a goalie that has
that's
to
the
stop
difference.
some.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, man, if you're not a fan of hockey but you're watching the show, do yourself a favor and watch an Oilers game and just watch number 97. I mean, it
Mhm.
is something truly special, and you're gonna wonder how this dude hasn't had a Stanley Cup. It just shows you how competitive this game is. Because right now you would think front runner, this guy should have at least 2 cups already. He's only been in the league for 5-6 years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he ever wins a cup. I hope he does because if
Do you think he ever wins a cup with Edmonton?
yeah, I think he does eventually. I just don't see
You?
how right now. I think I'm just believing in it, but I don't trust their team building right now. It
Yeah,
feels very LeBron Cleveland round 1.
I agree. No, I
Real quick
agree there.
before we go, I'm curious about your thoughts. Do you believe in the Erik Karlsson resurgence?
See, this one, I was hoping you weren't gonna ask this one because I'm not prepared for it. But if I had to go off like the top of my head right now, this can't last, right? I mean,
He's
it
second in the
can't
league in
last.
points.
I mean, it's insane though.
He's
I
awesome.
mean, what did he have? 11 goals or like 10 goals in how many
11
games?
goals as a defenseman.
I-
It's awesome.
Insane. And then he had the 10, I think he got the 10 goals in 10 games, which is even more nuts, I think, to
Mhm.
start the season. And I'm watching it, and I remember we were trashing him at the beginning of the year, too. So I think we kind of deserve this one. I don't think they'll last though.
Mhm.
Once the games start to everybody goes through that 1 week where they lose a bunch of games, and it comes down to, can your leaders really regroup? Saying that Erik Karlsson can't. I'm just saying I don't think the Sharks would be able to.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not a believer in them right now. I think he's
Mhm.
had a phenomenal start, but I think a lot of teams can say, "Oh, we've had a good start," or a lot of players can say, "We've had a good start," but unfortunately, it doesn't go the right direction usually.
Of course. It's just fun to watch. I mean, he was
It
such a
is.
great player in Ottawa. It's great to see him back at it.
Yeah.
The last
Oh,
150-point season, by the way, if McDavid breaks it, was Lemieux in 96. He had 160 points. So if we can break that this year, maybe.
damn. That is. I hope so. I think it'd be great for the game.
So,
I think it'd be
yeah.
great for the game if he did do it.
Mhm.
That's a lot of points to
It
ask
is.
for,
It's a
though.
lot.
And especially this day and age of hockey, it's almost unthinkable to actually
Mhm.
have that number next to your name on the stats
Absolutely.
list at the end of the season.
Something to
Um,
monitor.
yeah, we'll keep a nice little monitor on it. Maybe I'll
The
start
McDavid
putting something
watch.
behind the wall, put the McDavid hunt to 60 or what was it, 164?
161 was 96. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start the little chain, the
Mhm.
goal to 162.
Let's do it.
I love it though. But I got to get one more opinion from you though before
Let's
we
do
finish
it.
up. What's going on with my Buffalo Sabres? What do you see from the non-fan perspective?
I just
Say whatever you need to. My feelings won't be hurt. They were crushed years ago.
it's nothing wrong. There's nothing that should be overly concerning other than the defense is inexperienced. That's all there is. And offensively, they're potent, but they're not committed. They're not disciplined enough, I think, to withstand what an 82 game season defensively takes.
If you take Tage Thompson off
Mhm.
this team, they may only have 2 wins. I'm serious. I'm serious. That is the only player right now that keeps us in games.
The value
Outside
of
of
a
it,
true center is really, really important. A two-way center that
yeah.
plugs holes. I mean, it's really it's impossible to
Well,
overlook.
and for me too, I think you look at it and the way the Sabres had a phenomenal start. They
Mhm.
got unfortunate with injury to their 2 of their top 4 defensemen in
Mhm.
Yoki Haru and Samuelson. Um, After that happened, they started to go downhill. And I think it was just more just having the physical bodies. This team is not physical anymore. They started off the season very physical. Darlene was even a little chippy himself. He was spraying people with snow, using his stick after plays, becoming a little bit of a rat, which I loved.
Yeah.
And then one game in Tampa, Darlene gets suckered right to the face. No response by the team whatsoever. Since then, no physicality whatsoever. I think that's the name of the game for the Sabres is they are not the most skillful team, but if they want to win games, they have to win the physical battle. Plus, this team is also dead last in hits per game. So that should say something. Yeah, obviously, hockey's a little rough for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, it'll turn around. There's still a lot to look forward to in Buffalo, but yeah, they're missing some center depth for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that's going to conclude our episode here, guys. Thank you for joining. Sam, thanks for hopping on last minute. I know
Yep,
it's
absolutely.
unfortunate timing or whatever it may be, but I think we're going to try and do these nights from here on out. We'll keep you guys updated. But other than that, we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.